Buying and selling a house or home at the same time. It sounds complicated. It is, but it's common. There are thousands of people, gosh, millions of people in the country doing it all the time. But it does take a special understanding of how to do it. There's ways to sell first. There's ways to buy first. And then, of course, ending at the exact same time. Because what's the whole point? For you to move in from your old home to your new home seamlessly. So let's talk about how to do that and different ways to do that. So first, let's talk about the home purchase. That's the whole point of all of this, is to get into a new home. So there's going to be 3 major milestones. Now, there's lots of little things that happen. We can talk about that in another video, but let's keep it really simple since we're talking about buying and selling 2 homes at the same time. So the first step is really simple, right? You go out, you start looking for homes. Sometimes this is time sensitive. Sometimes if you're moving and your job starts, you have a deadline on when to view homes. Sometimes you're lucky enough that this timeline can be indefinite, but that's going to be really the first stage, right? View homes. Second thing, making an offer. You find a home you like, you make an offer to the seller, and then you reach an agreement with that seller. Once you reach an agreement with that seller, then we have the purchasing process. Now, the purchasing process customarily, when not buying or selling a home, is about 30 days. How long does it take to make an offer? Sometimes it can be the same day. Sometimes it can take a couple, 2 days, 3 days, depending on how the negotiation goes with the seller. And then again, viewing the home, that's up to you and your timeline on when you need to commit to a home. Now let's talk about the typical selling process. Same thing, there's some complexities, but let's leave it simple for now. So first step's going to be preparing your home for sale, getting it ready, staging it, removing things, fixing up your home if you need to so that you can get top dollar on your home, that prep time. Then going on the market, allowing showings, perhaps open houses, finding that right buyer that's acceptable to you, finding that top dollar offer that's acceptable to you. Next, accepting the offer, very similar to the making the offer process when buying a home, that negotiation between you and the buyer until you reach an agreement. Then, of course, the purchasing process, getting the loan, inspections, those type of things. I don't want to get too deep into that and keep it simple, but a similar purchasing process from when you're buying your home. Now let's talk about customary timelines. What is pretty normal in the selling process? We've learned a committed seller, it takes about a week to get your home ready for sale. Getting it, maybe touching up some paint, staging it, getting it ready for photos, cleaning up the yard, those type of things. Give or take about a week, especially when you're in the process of buying a home, it takes about a week. Marketing process, well gosh, this varies. In a really hot market, it can only take a matter of days to sell a home. In a more balanced market, it could take upwards of a month. Now we've learned in buying and selling, going past a month is pretty tough in a buying and selling situation. So we generally say about 30 days or less to find an acceptable offer on your home. Negotiating process, like I just mentioned, can be same day, can be a handful of days. It just depends on how the negotiating process is going between buyer and seller. And then last but not least, the purchasing process. About the fastest is around 30 days. It's really uncommon in our marketplace to be less than 30 days unless somebody has already moved out and the home is empty. But especially if there's a loan involved, it's going to take a lender at least 30 days to complete the purchasing process. Now let's talk about combining the two, buying and selling a home at the same time. So it can be done a couple of different ways, buying first or selling first. So how do we overlap that, right? Because the real goal is to have the ending point be on the same day. You move from your one house into your other house. That's really what this goal is about when buying and selling a home in most circumstances. So let's put up both. So we've talked about the traditional buying process. We've talked about the traditional selling process. So how do we move this around so that you can successfully move into the house basically on the same day? The biggest way is the purchasing process. So if you're a buyer, you can sometimes be flexible about the purchasing process, extending out that timeline, making it longer so that you have time to do the steps necessary to sell your home. Conversely, you can do the opposite. You can sell your home and then be a little more flexible in the purchasing process of selling your home so that you can overlap finding a home, writing an offer on a home, and buying a home. Now, in writing an offer on a home, when you have to sell a home, it's a little different. It's a contingent offer, and this term is used nationally. It's not market specific, but basically you're saying to the seller, I want to make you an offer on your home contingent on my home selling. So then that way you're not committed to buying that house unless your home successfully sells. It's called a contingent offer. Everybody has the same principles on doing this. Everybody has their own forms. So I want to share with you a little bit about how our forms are in the Northern Nevada marketplace, but all contracts generally have the same guidelines. So let's put up again talking about the traditional selling process. So we have some milestones when selling. You have to get your home ready for sale. You have to market your home. You have to accept an offer. And then you have the purchasing process to complete the sale. So all of those milestones are put inside of the contract presented to the home that you want to buy. So I pulled out a part of our actual contract. This is literally our contract. And it talks about different scenarios when making an offer for on a house where you want to sell yours. So this is our formats. Everybody in the nation has different formats, but the rules are about the same. So obviously, if you don't buy a home in our contract, that line 2, that checkbox is marked, but that's not what this video is about. It's really about marking box on line 4, having to sell a house to purchase the one you want. There's a lot of different scenarios depending on where you are in the process. So on the seller bar there, maybe you haven't put your house up for sale yet. Maybe you haven't even gotten your house ready for sale yet. Maybe you have and you've accepted an offer already and you've already began the purchasing process. So contracts generally allow for all of those scenarios. So if you look at the top box of A, that's what it says. The property is in escrow. That means you've accepted an offer and you're scheduled to close on a certain date. That's actually the best of scenarios. So if you have a house and you've accepted an offer and that buyer does not have to sell a home either, that is the most attractive to a seller in the marketplace. So know that if you're out negotiating on homes and maybe the market's a little hotter and you're struggling getting your contingent offer accepted, that's one of the best ways to do it is have your marketing process far enough along that you've committed to a buyer already. That starts lowering the risk to the seller on the home that you want to buy. Now let's talk about some other scenarios. Sometimes it's an escrow, but you chose to accept an offer from a buyer who also has to sell a home. That can get a little complicated. And in the community, we really try to avoid this because now we start having a domino effect. The house that you like, 2 houses have to sell for you to successfully get that home. That's a lot of risk to a seller. And a lot of times they will reject that offer because it's just too risky, because now you have to have a lot of things. We talked about putting the 2 bars up. Now you got 3 bars up trying to complete the purchasing process. So although it happens, I'm literally in one right now, it is best to avoid those type of circumstances, but sometimes it's unavoidable. Especially in a balanced marketplace, it is more likely that a seller would consider that if you did choose to accept an offer for someone who has to sell a home. Let's talk about the next one. It's already listed, so you've already prepared your home for sale, and it's actively being marketed, but you haven't yet accepted an offer. Lastly, you haven't listed your property at all for sale. You still have to prep your home for sale. You have to market your home for sale, accept an offer, and begin the purchasing process. Now that may sound like a seller won't work with you on those type of situations because you have so many steps to take place, but I'll tell you it's actually the opposite. In a balanced marketplace, we do this all the time, where a buyer will find a home first and then get their home ready for sale. It doesn't work quite as well in a hotter marketplace where there's more competition, but in a balanced marketplace where homes aren't selling as quick as they do in hot markets, sellers will consider this, especially when they haven't received an offer for weeks on end. They're really excited to receive any offer. And this is actually a really common box that we check in the marketplace. Why? Because a lot of times buyers don't want to put their house up on the market until they find the home they love. They're not really worried about selling, they're more worried about buying, and a really common concern, buying and selling at the same time. So often on, this is line 13 of this contract, this is a really common one that we check, especially when the market has cooled down and homes are sitting for longer. So now, although homes have to be sold at the same time, one usually starts before the other. So you can either start the buying process first, or you can start the selling process first. They rarely start at the same time, but the important part is having them end at the same time. So let's talk about first what I've learned is most preferred by buyers. And that's going to be buying the home first, selling the home secondary. So let's jump back up on the graph with the bars. The reason buyers love this over selling your home first is basically there's no pressure to find that right home. They can start the viewing process. the negotiating process without ever having to worry about the pressure of their home being for sale. This is, again, the most common way in a balanced marketplace that buyers buy and sell at the same time. So basically, we don't even think about selling the home until you've found a home you like and the seller has agreed to your offer. They've agreed to allow you time to prepare your home for sale. They've agreed to allow you time to market your home, and they've agreed to allow you time to complete the purchasing process. So when the real key in that is the flexible purchasing process of buying. So you can see how that bar on the buying side, the purchasing process is much bigger because the seller is allowing for a longer purchasing process to allow you to sell your home. A really successful strategy in a balanced marketplace. So just like it shows, basically you begin your selling process at the time of an accepted offer on a home you want to buy. And basically the purchasing process is prolonged while you sell your home. Now, just like I talked about in the contracts, you're going to have timelines. So let's talk about what is traditional with this type of offer. Traditional is you have about 7 days to get your home ready for sale. Then once it's for sale, you have about 30 days to accept an offer. Then you have a further 30 days to complete the purchasing process on the home you want to sell. Adding all these up from the total selling process before, it's about 67 days from the time the offer is accepted on the home you want. Now remember, this won't work with all sellers. The way this strategy works, allowing you time to market your home, prepare your home, and sell your home, you have to find a seller on a home that you want to buy who's flexible, who is willing to let you have that time to sell your home. Because remember, this purchasing process for them is going to be about 67 days. That is far longer than the traditional 30 days of if they were working with a buyer who didn't have to sell a home. So not all sellers are open to this, but what we've learned is the longer a property sits on the market, the more likely they are to work with a buyer such as this. Now let's talk about the next scenario, selling first. Now, this is not really an ideal situation, and I will say I've learned in hotter marketplaces, if a person is moving locally just because they want to buy a nicer home or other various reasons, they tend not to do it in a hot marketplace because this can be stressful on a buyer because you are selling your home first, and if things don't work out, you might have a temporary period where you're not able to move into your new home. It's not as easy to time the closing dates in the same way as if you're buying a home first. So when do we have this happen? A lot of times on relocation. Maybe somebody got a job out of state moving to our area, and the home that they're selling isn't in our marketplace. It's in another state. So they're selling either way. Now, if a market is hotter than they would like it to be, they start that selling process first. But then the buyer they choose to work with, they will focus only on buyers who are willing to be flexible in their house hunting process on where they're moving to. That's the most common time this is used. Now let's flip the bars. Talking about selling first, you can see how that purchasing process when selling can be really spread out because now the viewing process, the offer process, and then the purchasing process of the home they want to buy happens after they have accepted an offer on their home they're selling. Why? Because it makes their offer stronger. Just like I talked about in the contract, that is the least red tape to a homeowner who's considering a contingent offer. And the secret to this strategy being successful is finding a buyer who's willing to work with you while you find your next home. Now, the real secret to being successful in this is understanding there can be speed bumps along the way. What can go wrong? Well, you have two purchases happening at the exact same time. So there's milestones that can complicate or even cancel a deal. What are those? Inspections, one of the biggest milestones that can create a cancellation of a contract. You don't approve the condition of the home you want to buy, or the buyer on your home doesn't approve the condition and want to buy your home. Another milestone, the bank's opinion of value on your home, also known as an appraisal. If the bank feels the home that you purchased is worth less than you offered, or the bank feels that the home you're selling is worth less than the buyer is giving you, that can be a big complication. And then last but not least, the loan. Something could happen with the loan, whether it be the job of your situation and qualifying or the qualifying of the buyer on your home. Pretty rare nowadays because lenders do such a great job pre-vetting buyers, but it still happens. Those things can occur in the purchasing process. When you have both at the same time, it can get complicated. So what's the secret to success? There's really one thing and one thing alone for advice on successfully buying and selling a home at the same time. That is being flexible. starting the process in one way and ending it in another is common when buying and selling at the same time. Being flexible on dates, being flexible on closing dates, being flexible to renegotiate if something comes up with regarding conditions, if something comes up with disagreeing with the bank's opinion of value. Understanding that sometimes the proceeds you receive when selling might not be the same way at the end because there was a renegotiation. The times I've seen deals fail when buying and selling a home at the same time is somebody in the transaction is firm, is not willing to renegotiate, and is not flexible. So the biggest advice I have for you in buying and selling a home at the same time is you have to be fluid, you have to be flexible, and you have to be in the mindset that you might have to renegotiate to keep the deal together. That is the most successful strategy on buying a home at the same time, is starting in one place, being prepared to renegotiate, finding solutions, and don't be firm in the contracts that you've accepted or the contracts you write, because sometimes speed bumps can come up along the way. And buying and selling can be complex, but with flexibility and willing to renegotiate, it's a really successful strategy, and millions of homeowners do it year over year.